Imagine coming home to the perfect life, only to overhear the two people you trust most, your husband and his sister, plotting to steal your entire inheritance and leave you with nothing. They laugh about how clueless you are, call your career cute, treat you like a doormat while draining your bank account behind your back. But what if you weren't as clueless as they thought? What if you stayed silent, not out of weakness, but to plan the perfect revenge? This is my story of betrayal, quiet rage, and the most satisfying comeback you'll ever hear. From rock bottom tears to taking back everything they stole, you won't believe how it ends. Watch till the end, you'll feel every emotion. I never imagined that the home I'd built with such care, the cozy three-bedroom house in suburban Chicago, with its sunlit kitchen and the garden I'd planted myself, would turn into a labyrinth of shadows and unspoken accusations. My name is Ima, and for the first 10 years of my marriage to Mark, I thought we had it all. I was 32 when it started, working as a graphic designer from home, balancing freelance gigs with keeping our life running smoothly. Mark was the charismatic sales manager everyone loved, outgoing, always cracking jokes at family gatherings, the kind of guy who could charm a room without trying. We met in college, fell hard, and built what I believed was a solid foundation. But looking back, the signs were there from the beginning, subtle like whispers in the wind. It all unraveled one rainy afternoon in early fall. I'd just finished a client call when I heard the front door creak open earlier than usual. Mark wasn't due home for hours, but there he was, shaking off his umbrella, his face flushed, not from the cold, but from something else. Excitement? Guilt? He didn't notice me at first, too busy texting on his phone with a smirk that didn't belong on a husband coming home to his wife. "Hey, babe," he said finally, slipping the phone into his pocket a beat too quickly. "You're home early." I forced a smile, my chest tightening inexplicably. "Client wrapped up fast. Everything okay at work?" He waved it off, mumbling about a meeting getting canceled, but his eyes darted away, avoiding mine. That night, as we sat down for dinner, spaghetti I'd made from scratch, his favorite, his phone buzzed again. He glanced at it under the table, his fork pausing midair. "Work stuff," he said, but the way he silenced it felt deliberate, like he was hiding a secret lover or a gambling debt. The real blow came a week later. We'd invited his sister, Elena, over for dinner. Elena was 5 years older than Mark, sharp-tongued and always impeccably dressed, with a real estate job that she lorded over everyone. She and Mark had always been close. Too close, I'd sometimes think, but I'd brush it off as sibling loyalty. That evening, as I cleared the plates, I overheard them in the living room. Elena's voice was low, conspiratorial. "You sure she doesn't suspect? We've got to be careful with the accounts." Mark chuckled softly. "Ima? Nah, she's too wrapped up in her little designs. Trusts me completely." My hands froze on the dishwasher door, the plates clattering slightly. Accounts? What accounts? I stepped back into the shadows of the hallway, my heart pounding like a drum in my ears. They were talking about me, about us, like I was some naive outsider in my own marriage. Elena leaned in closer. "Good. Mom's counting on this. Once we transfer the rest from her inheritance fund, we can finally get that property. She won't even notice until it's too late." Inheritance fund? My parents had left me a modest trust after their accident 5 years ago, enough to pay off our house and give us a cushion. Mark managed the finances. I'd trusted him implicitly, but now bile rose in my throat. Were they stealing from me? Plotting behind my back? I wanted to burst in, demand answers, but my feet wouldn't move. My hands shook as I gripped the counter, a wave of humiliation washing over me. How long had this been going on? Was our entire life a lie? That night, lying in bed beside Mark, his snores steady and untroubled, I stared at the ceiling, tears silently streaming down my face. The betrayal cut deep, not just the money, but the dismissal, the way they saw me as disposable, easily fooled. I felt small, powerless, like the ground had shifted beneath me. Why hadn't I seen it? My instincts had whispered warnings for months. Odd bank statements I'd dismissed, Elena's snide comments about my hobby job, but I'd stayed silent, prioritizing peace over truth. As dawn broke, the injustice festered like an open wound. Something had to change, but I didn't know how. Not yet. What haunts me still is how one overheard conversation shattered my world, leaving me questioning everything, including myself. The days after that dinner blurred into a haze of forced normalcy and inner turmoil. I went through the motions, designing logos for clients, grocery shopping, even laughing at Mark's jokes over breakfast. But inside, a storm raged. My chest felt perpetually tight, like an invisible band squeezing the air from my lungs. Every time Mark kissed my cheek goodbye in the morning, I wondered if it was genuine or just part of the act. "Love you, Ima," he'd say with that easy grin, and I'd mumble it back, my throat dry, the words tasting like ash. The consequences hit hard and fast. I couldn't just let it go, so I started checking our finances in secret. I'd wait until Mark was in the shower, steam bogging the bathroom mirror, and then I'd log into the bank app on my phone with trembling fingers. What I found made my stomach churn. Unauthorized transfers from my inheritance account, $5,000 here, $10,000 there, funneled into an account I didn't recognize. One was clearly labeled Elena Prop Invest. They weren't just talking about it that night, they were actively doing it. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone, rage bubbling up alongside a crushing wave of shame. How could I have been so blind? I'd handed over control of the money after my parents died, grieving and vulnerable, trusting Mark to handle everything because he was good with numbers. Now it felt like a betrayal of their memory too. Elena doubled down without even realizing I suspected anything. She dropped by unannounced a few days later, her designer bag slung over her shoulder, that fake smile plastered across her perfectly made-up face. "Ima, darling, you look tired. Everything okay?" Her tone dripped with false concern, but her eyes scanned the room like she already owned half of it. We sat in the kitchen, sipping coffee I'd made, and she launched right into her latest success story, closing a big deal on a lakefront property downtown. "Mark helped with the numbers, of course," she said casually, watching me over the rim of her cup like she was testing the waters. "He's so good at that stuff. You're lucky to have him managing things for you." Lucky. The word stung like a slap across the face. I forced a nod, my fingers gripping the mug so hard my knuckles turned white. Inside, my mind was screaming, "You're stealing from me, you entitled witch!" But I stayed silent, that old habit of avoiding conflict kicking in like muscle memory. "Yeah, he is," I managed to reply, my voice steady even as fury coiled tight in my gut. She reached across the table and patted my hand condescendingly, her manicured nails cold against my skin. "Don't worry your pretty head about it. We'll take care of you. Family first, right?" Family. The word twisted the knife even deeper. Mark's family had always treated me like an outsider. Subtle digs at my artsy freelance career, little comments about how I wasn't pulling my weight financially. Now it was crystal clear. I wasn't family to them. I was just a means to an end, a wallet they could plunder while patting me on the head like a clueless pet. That night, I claimed a headache and slept in the guest room just to avoid sharing a bed with Mark. Alone under the dim lamp, disbelief gave way to raw anger. How dare they? I'd supported Mark through 2 job losses early in our marriage, lent money to Elena when her real estate business hit a rough patch 2 years ago, and this was how they repaid me? The emotional spiral only got worse from there. At work, I'd stare at my computer screen for hours, the designs blurring through unshed tears. Self-doubt crept in like poison. Maybe I did deserve this. Maybe I was too trusting, too weak, too naive to notice what was happening right under my nose. But the resentment grew stronger every day, a slow burning fire beneath the ashes of my pain. Mark noticed my distance, of course. He wasn't completely oblivious. "What's wrong, babe? You've seemed off all week," he said one evening, pulling me into a hug that felt hollow now, his arms like chains instead of comfort. I shrugged it off with a weak smile, just stressed with deadlines. He bought it, or pretended to, and went back to scrolling on his phone. By the end of that week, the wound had festered into something unbearable. Another transfer showed up in the statements, this one for $15,000. And then I saw the text Mark sent Elena while he was at work. I'd started checking his phone when he left it charging on the nightstand. All set for the next one. Ima won't miss it. She never even looks. My blood boiled so hot I thought I might actually be sick. The internal conflict was tearing me apart. Confront them now and risk blowing up my entire life, or stay silent and watch them steal even more. The resentment built like steam in a pressure cooker, threatening to explode. Little did I know, the pain was only beginning, and it would soon push me to an edge I never thought I'd reach. The breaking point didn't come with a scream or a slammed door. It came disguised as a casual family gathering, a Saturday barbecue at Elena's brand new condo overlooking the Chicago skyline. Mark insisted we go. "Come on, Ima, it'll be good for you. You've been cooped up with work too much lately." His hand rested on my lower back as he said it, that familiar, guiding touch that used to feel protective. Now it felt like ownership. I agreed because I wanted to watch them. I needed to see how far this went, how deep the rot had spread. So I smiled, packed a store-bought salad like the good little wife, and we drove downtown in tense silence while Mark hummed along to the radio. Elena's condo was everything she'd bragged about. Floor-to-ceiling windows, marble counters, sleek furniture that screamed new money. My money. The place was already packed when we arrived. Mark's cousins, a few of his work buddies, Elena's real estate colleagues, all laughing, drinking, toasting her latest triumph. I stood near the edge of the patio, clutching a glass of soda, feeling like an extra in someone else's victory reel. Elena found me by the grill, of course. She always did. Her perfume hit first, sharp, expensive, before her voice cut through the chatter. "I'm a sweetheart, there you are." She air-kissed both cheeks, then pulled back with that practiced look of concern. "You look exhausted. Everything all right at home?" I opened my mouth to answer, but she was already rolling. "You know, I was just telling everyone how proud we are of Mark, closing those big accounts left and right." She raised her voice just enough for the cluster of guests nearby to hear. "Honestly, Ima, you should think about going back to a real job. Freelancing is cute and all, but at your age, stability matters." A ripple of soft laughter floated over from the group. My cheeks burned hot, blood rushing to my face so fast I felt dizzy. Cute at my age. I was 32. I forced a tight smile, my fingers tightening around the cold glass until I thought it might crack. "I love what I do," I said quietly, but my voice cracked on the last word, betraying me completely. Mark appeared at Elena's side like he'd been summoned. He chuckled, slinging an arm around his sister's shoulders. "Yeah, babe, Elena's got a point. We could really use the extra income right now. Things are tight." He said it lightly, like a joke, but the guests laughed again, this time louder. One of his cousins called out, "Better listen to Big Sis, Ima." I stood there frozen, humiliation flooding every inch of me. They were painting me as the deadweight wife in front of everyone we knew, the incompetent one, the hobbyist, the fool who didn't even notice her own money disappearing. My throat closed up. I couldn't swallow. All I could do was nod weakly and mumble something about checking the salad inside. Later, Mark's mother cornered me in the kitchen while I pretended to refill chips. She patted my arm with that pitying smile I'd always hated. "Dear, you know Mark works so hard for you both. Try not to make things harder on him, hmm?" Her words were soft, almost kind, but they landed like a gut punch. Harder on him, as if I were the burden. By the time we left, the sun had set, and the city lights glittered mockingly below us. Mark drove home humming again, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on my thigh like nothing had happened. Great party, huh? Elena really knows how to throw one. I stared out the passenger window, silent. Tears welled up, hot and unstoppable. I blinked them back until we pulled into our driveway, then bolted inside the house the second the car stopped. I made it to the bathroom before the dam broke. Locking the door, I slid down the cool tile wall and folded in on myself. Sobs tore out of me, ugly, choking, uncontrollable. My chest heaved so hard it hurt. My hands shook as I pressed them to my face. How had I let this happen? How had I become the punchline in my own life? Powerless, disrespected, disposable. They didn't just steal my money, they stole my dignity piece by piece and laughed while doing it. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually, the sobs quieted into shuddering breaths. Mark knocked once, softly. Ima, you okay in there? His voice sounded concerned, but I knew better now. I didn't answer. I couldn't. When I finally emerged, the house was dark. Mark was already asleep, snoring peacefully in our bed like he didn't have a care in the world. I stood in the hallway, staring at his silhouette, and something inside me shifted. The pain was still there, raw, searing, but underneath it, something new sparked. A quiet, dangerous resolve. No more tears, no more silence. They thought I was weak. They thought I was clueless. They were wrong. I walked to the living room, sat on the couch in the dark, and let the decisions settle over me like armor. I was done being their doormat. I would uncover every lie, every transfer, every cruel word. I would build my case slowly, carefully, and when the time came, I would make them feel exactly what they'd made me feel. The woman who cried on the bathroom floor that night, she was gone. Something stronger was rising in her place. With that resolve flickering to life, I knew there was no turning back. The transformation had begun. The woman who came home from Alina's barbecue that night wasn't the same one who'd left the house that morning. Something inside me had snapped clean in two, and in the quiet space where the tears finally stopped, a new version of me started to grow. She didn't scream, she didn't rage, she just changed. Outwardly, everything stayed the same. I still made Mark's coffee the way he liked it, 2 sugars, splash of cream. I still said, "Have a good day," when he left for work. I still answered Elena's texts with polite little emojis when she sent pictures of her new condo decor. But inside, a fire had been lit, steady and white-hot, and I fed it carefully, every single day. The first thing I did was teach myself. Late at night, after Mark's snores filled the bedroom, I'd slip out of bed and pad barefoot to the spare room I'd turned into my office. I'd close the door softly, open my laptop, and disappear into a world I'd never needed before. Articles on financial fraud, hidden assets, Illinois divorce law, forensic accounting basics. I ordered books on Amazon with 1-day shipping, titles like Protect Your Assets in Divorce, Signs of Financial Abuse, and How to Rebuild After Gaslighting. They arrived in plain packaging, and I hid them behind my design magazines on the bookshelf. My hands didn't shake anymore when I read the bank statements. They moved with purpose, screenshotting transfers, saving PDFs, building a folder labeled Receipts that I backed up to 3 separate cloud drives. I started noticing patterns. Transfers always happened on Fridays, right after my freelance payments hit our joint account. Mark would make them look like bill payments or investments. Clever, but not clever enough. I began watching them the way a predator studies prey. Mark's routines became data points. He always showered at 7:15 a.m. That gave me 12 minutes to check his phone if he left it on the nightstand. He took late meetings every other Thursday. Elena dropped by uninvited on Sundays with some excuse about borrowing a serving platter. I listened from the hallway now, ear pressed close to the wall, memorizing every word. One Sunday, Elena swept in wearing sunglasses indoors like she was already famous. "The lakefront flip is going through next month," she told Mark in a low, excited voice. "We just need one more big transfer to cover closing costs." Mark hesitated. I heard it in the pause. "Ima's been quiet lately. I don't want to push it." Elena laughed, sharp and dismissive. Please, she's too busy playing with her little Photoshop projects to notice. You worry too much. I stood frozen in the kitchen, gripping a dish towel so hard my fingers went numb. Little Photoshop projects. That's what my career was to them? The career that had paid our mortgage when Mark was between jobs? The career that funded their investments? The arrogance in her voice lit something dangerous inside me. They didn't just underestimate me, they didn't see me as a person at all. That was the moment I stopped doubting myself. I started taking care of my body the way I was taking care of my mind. I joined a small gym 3 miles from the house and went at 5:30 a.m. before Mark even stirred. The first weeks were brutal. My lungs burned, my muscles screamed, but I kept going. Every deadlift, every mile on the treadmill, I pictured their faces. Elena's smirk, Mark's casual lies, the laughter at the barbecue. I got stronger. My arms toned, my posture straightened. I slept better. I looked better. And Mark noticed. One morning, he caught me lacing up my sneakers. "Whoa, babe, gym again? You're looking... damn." He grinned, reaching for me like it was all for him. I let him pull me close, then stepped back with a soft smile. "It's for me, actually." His eyebrows shot up, surprised, but he laughed it off. "Well, keep it up. I'm not complaining." He had no idea the strength I was building wasn't for his eyes. It was for the day I'd need to stand unbroken in front of them both. The contrast between my outer calm and inner fire grew sharper every day. At dinner, I'd ask Mark about his day, nod in all the right places, even laugh at his stories. Inside, I was cataloging every lie. When Elena called to check in, I'd chat about recipes or the weather while mentally adding her latest brag to my evidence list. They never suspected. Why would they? I was still sweet, quiet Ima, the one who apologized first, the one who kept the peace. But peace was over. By the end of that month, I'd done something irreversible. I used a chunk of my latest freelance payout, money Mark never tracked, and hired a private investigator. A woman named Carla recommended on a divorce forum I'd joined under a fake name. We met in a coffee shop 40 minutes away. She was calm, no nonsense, ex-cop. She said, "Give me 2 weeks, I'll get you everything." The first report came on a Tuesday. I opened it alone in my office, heart pounding. Offshore accounts in Mark's name, joint holdings with Elena, over $220,000 traced directly back to my inheritance. Emails between them discussing the exit plan, divorce me once the last property closed, leave me with nothing. Proof of Mark's affair with a junior rep at his company. Photos, timestamps, everything. I sat back in my chair, breath steady for the first time in months. The pain was still there, but it had shape now. Purpose. They thought they were playing chess while I was playing checkers. They were wrong. I was learning the board better than they ever had. As the pieces fell into place, I felt a quiet power growing, and soon I'd make my first move. The transformation was complete. I wasn't waiting for them to strike the final blow anymore. I was done reacting. It was time to act. I started small, subtle moves they'd never see coming, the kind that would unravel everything slowly, like pulling a single thread on a sweater and watching the whole thing fall apart. The first real step was legal, but quiet. I'd spent weeks researching lawyers online, reading reviews under fake accounts, looking for someone who specialized in financial abuse and high-conflict divorce. I found Sarah Keller, a no-nonsense attorney in downtown Chicago with a reputation for shredding cheating spouses and their enablers in court. We met in a tiny coffee shop 45 minutes from home, far enough that no one we knew would ever spot us. I wore a baseball cap pulled low, sunglasses indoors like some paranoid celebrity. She didn't bat an eye. I slid a USB drive across the table. Every screenshot, every bank statement, every email I'd forwarded from Mark's computer. "They've taken over $220,000 from my inheritance," I said, voice steady. "They're planning to take the rest and leave me with nothing." Sarah plugged it into her laptop, scanned the files, and looked up at me with something like respect. This is airtight, Emma. We can freeze the accounts, file for temporary orders, even pursue criminal charges if you want, but we need to time it perfectly. I leaned forward. I don't want it fast. I want them to feel it slowly, piece by piece, like they did to me. She smiled for the first time, a sharp, dangerous smile. Then we play the long game. Back home, I started planting financial seeds. I opened a new bank account in my name only at a completely different bank. Every freelance payment from that point forward went straight there. Mark never noticed. He'd stopped tracking my little design gigs years ago. I paid myself first now, quietly, consistently, building a safety net they couldn't touch. Then came the social seeds. I began reaching out to old friends I'd lost touch with during the marriage, people who'd known me before Mark, before I shrank myself to fit his family's expectations. Coffee here, lunch there, casual conversations. Yeah, Mark's been really stressed at work lately. Long hours, short temper. I think the pressure's getting to him. Or, Elena's real estate deals have been keeping her up at night. Sounds like some complications with investors. Nothing accusatory, just enough to plant doubt, to make people wonder. But the real first strike, the one that sent the first invisible ripple, was professional. I'd learned from Carla, my private investigator, that Elena had cut corners on several property deals, forged signatures on disclosures, undervalued properties to dodge taxes. Small things individually, but together, career-ending. And Mark, his affair with the junior rep, Lisa, wasn't just emotional. There were emails suggesting he'd fast-tracked her promotions in exchange for favors. I didn't go nuclear. Not yet. Instead, I created an anonymous email address through a VPN. One night, after Mark fell asleep with the TV still flickering in the bedroom, I sat at my desk with a glass of wine and typed 2 separate messages. The first went to the Illinois Real Estate Board's ethics complaint portal. Subject line, concerns regarding license holder Elena Reynolds. Attached were scanned documents from Carla, redacted just enough to protect sources, but damning all the same. I hit send. No drama, no trace. The second went to the anonymous HR tip line at Mark's company. Subject, inappropriate relationship affecting workplace fairness. I attached 2 photos Carla had taken, Mark and Lisa leaving a hotel together, timestamps clear, and a few of the more explicit emails. Send. I closed the laptop, heart pounding, but not from fear, from power. A week later, the first signs appeared. Elena came over for dinner unannounced, something she hadn't done since the barbecue. Her makeup was perfect as always, but her eyes were wild. She waited until I was in the kitchen to corner Mark in the living room. Some asshole filed a complaint with the board, she hissed. They're requesting all my files on the lakefront deal. It's nothing serious, but it's annoying as hell. Mark rubbed his temples. Probably a disgruntled seller. It'll blow over. She paced. It better. We're too close to closing. I walked in carrying a bottle of wine. Face calm, voice warm. Everything okay? You both look tense. Elena forced a laugh. Just business stuff, Emma. Nothing to worry about. She accepted the glass I offered, but her hand trembled slightly. Inside, I felt it. A hidden win. The first crack in her armor. They had no idea it came from me. That same week, Mark came home early one day, tie loosened, face flushed with anger. HR called me in today, he muttered, slamming his briefcase down. Some anonymous bullshit about favoritism in promotions. They're making me fill out forms. I touched his arm gently. That sounds awful. Do you think someone is jealous? He shrugged, but I saw the unease in his eyes. Probably. People are petty. I nodded sympathetically, pouring him a drink. Inside, triumph bloomed warm and sweet. The seeds were planted. The tension was rising. They were starting to feel the ground shift beneath them, and they didn't even know why. The stakes were climbing now. One wrong move, one slip in my mask, and they might suspect, but I'd practiced this calm for years. I could hold it forever if I had to, because this wasn't just revenge anymore. It was justice, and I was only getting started. With that first ripple sent through their perfect little world, the pressure was about to build, and they had no idea what was coming. The first cracks had appeared. and I watched them spread with a calm that surprised even me. What started as small, anonymous nudges were now turning into real consequences, and Mark and Elena were starting to feel the weight of something they couldn't name. It began with Elena. About 10 days after I sent the complaint to the real estate board, she showed up at our door unannounced on a Wednesday evening. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, no blowout, no perfect waves, and her makeup couldn't quite hide the dark circles under her eyes. She brushed past me without her usual air kiss, heading straight for Mark in the living room. "They're launching a full audit," she said, voice low but shaking. "Not just the lakefront deal, all of them. They want every disclosure, every signature, every commission statement going back 3 years." She dropped her bag on the couch with a thud. "This isn't random, Mark. Someone's targeting me." Mark muted the TV, his jaw tightening. "Slow down, it's probably just routine. You've been closing big properties. Someone got jealous and filed a complaint. These things happen." Elena laughed, but it was bitter, edged with panic. "Routine? They've already frozen 2 of my escrow accounts. Clients are calling, pulling out. One couple just backed out of $1 million offer because their agent heard rumors." She started pacing, heels clicking hard against the hardwood. "If this gets out publicly, I'm done. License suspended, reputation ruined." I stood in the doorway from the kitchen, holding a tray with 3 mugs of chamomile tea I'd made the second I heard her car pull up. My face was soft, concerned, perfect mask. "That sounds awful, Elena," I said gently, setting the tray down. "Is there anything I can do?" She barely glanced at me, waving a dismissive hand. "No, Emma, this is big girl stuff." Then to Mark, "We need to move the rest of the money now, before they start looking at connected accounts." My pulse spiked, but I kept my breathing even. Big girl stuff. I poured her tea anyway, hands steady, and sat in the armchair like I was just there to listen. Mark rubbed his face. "We can't, not yet. Things are complicated at my end, too." That was the first I'd heard him admit it out loud. 2 days later, Mark came home early, something he never did. His tie was already loosened, shirt untucked, and his face had that flushed, angry look I'd seen only when deals fell through at work. He slammed the front door hard enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. "HR's on my ass," he snapped, tossing his keys on the counter. "They're doing a full investigation into workplace relationships and promotion practices." He air quoted it like it was ridiculous. "Someone sent photos, Emma. Me and Lisa leaving a hotel, time-stamped. Anonymous, of course." I froze for half a second, then turned from the stove with wide, worried eyes. "Photos? Mark, are they real?" He hesitated. Actually hesitated, before muttering, "It's complicated. Lisa and it was nothing serious. But now they're saying I showed favoritism. She got 2 promotions in 18 months. They're making it sound dirty." I walked over, touched his arm softly. "That's horrible, Emma. Who would do something like that?" "I don't know," he said, voice rising. "Some jealous prick in the office, probably. But if this goes higher, I could get suspended, or worse." He didn't sleep that night. I heard him pacing the living room until 3 a.m., phone glowing as he texted. Probably Alina, probably Lisa, probably both. The paranoia set in fast. Elena started calling Mark 3-4 times a day. I'd hear her through the walls. "Do you think it's the same person? First me, now you? Someone knows." Mark would shush her, glance toward the kitchen where I was working, but I caught every word. One night, they argued right in our dining room, voices rising despite their attempts to whisper. "You need to stop panicking," Mark hissed. "You're making it worse." "Making it worse?" Elena shot back. "My livelihood is collapsing, Mark, and now yours too. This isn't coincidence." "Then who? Who the hell would?" They both went quiet for a beat. I held my breath in the hallway. Elena's voice dropped. "Do you think Emma?" Mark laughed, actually laughed. "Emma? Come on. She doesn't even know how to check the bank app properly. She's clueless." Clueless. The word landed like a gift. I almost smiled. Elena wasn't convinced. She's been weird lately. Quiet, gym every morning, barely asks about money anymore. She's depressed or something, going through a phase. Trust me, she's not capable of this. Not capable. I stepped into the room then, carrying a bowl of popcorn like I was just come from the kitchen. Everything okay? You both sound stressed. They startled, exchanging a quick look. Elena forced a tight smile. Just work drama, sweetie. Nothing you need to worry about. I nodded, sat beside Mark, and curled into his side like the supportive wife they expected. He put an arm around me automatically. I let him. Inside, the fire roared. The stakes were rising fast now. My lawyer had already drafted the freeze order on the remaining accounts, ready to file the moment I gave the word. Carla, the PI, had uncovered even more. Texts between Mark and Elena discussing how to handle Emma once the final transfer went through. Divorce papers were being prepared. Criminal referral packets sat waiting. They were starting to crack, blaming each other, losing sleep, jumping at shadows, and I hadn't even played my real hand yet. I stayed silent, calculated, watching them unravel thread by thread. Because the best part, they still thought they were the hunters. As their perfect little world began to wobble beneath them, the trap was tightening, and total collapse was closer than they could ever imagine. The pressure wasn't just building anymore, it was closing in like a vice, and I could feel the metal biting into them from across the room. Everything accelerated after that night I overheard them dismiss me as clueless. My lawyer, Sarah, moved fast once I gave her the green light. She filed an emergency motion to freeze all joint and connected accounts, citing evidence of marital waste and potential dissipation of assets. The judge granted it within 48 hours. No notice to Mark, no warning, just a quiet, devastating lock on every dollar they thought was theirs. Mark discovered it first. He came home on a Thursday evening, phone glued to his ear, face the color of ash. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner, knife moving in steady rhythm, when he burst through the door. "They froze the accounts, Emma!" His voice cracked on my name. "All of them! Joint checking, savings, even the investment one. The bank won't let me touch a cent. What the hell did you do?" I set the knife down slowly, turned to face him with wide, confused eyes. "Me? I didn't do anything. Maybe it's connected to your HR investigation, or Elena's audit?" He stared at me, searching my face for a lie, but I'd practiced this moment in the mirror 100 times. Calm, innocent, concerned wife. He deflated slightly, running a hand through his hair. "Maybe. God, this timing." He trailed off, dialing Elena before he even took off his coat. She arrived 20 minutes later, practically vibrating with fury. Her coat was unbuttoned, scarf hanging loose, details I'd never seen on her before. Perfect Elena was unraveling. "They locked my business accounts too," she said without greeting me, storming into the dining room where Mark was pacing. "Everything tied to the lakefront flip, frozen. My lawyer says it's a spousal support hold from your marriage. How is that even possible?" Mark shook his head. "I don't know. Emma says—" Elena cut him off, eyes narrowing in my direction. I was still in the kitchen doorway, holding a glass of water I'd poured for myself. "Emma says what?" Mark finished weakly. "That maybe it's connected to my work stuff." Elena laughed, sharp, humorless. "Your work stuff? Don't be stupid. This is coordinated. Someone's coming after both of us." They moved to the living room, lowering their voices, but the house wasn't that big. I heard every word. "Elena, we need to move whatever's left offshore, now." Mark, "There is nothing left. The freeze caught it all. Even the Cayman account got flagged. Some international alert." Elena, "Then we sell something. The condo, my car, anything." Mark, "You think buyers will touch you right now? Your name's all over real estate forums, under investigation. Clients are ghosting you." Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then Elena's voice, smaller. What about Mom? She'll lose the house if we can't cover the reverse mortgage payment next month. Mark, I know. I stood there listening, knife forgotten, feeling the weight of every tear I'd cried in the last year, every humiliating laugh at the barbecue, every clueless and little designs. They were scared now, really scared, and it was only the beginning. The professional fallout hit harder the following week. Mark was officially suspended pending the HR investigation. He got the call on a Tuesday morning. I was in the home office when I heard him shout into the phone, "Suspended? Without pay? Are you kidding me?" He emerged 10 minutes later, tie askew, eyes red. "They're escorting me out tomorrow to collect my things, in front of everyone." He sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands. I brought him coffee, black, the way he drank it when he was stressed, and sat across from him. "I'm so sorry, Mark," I said softly, and I was. Sorry that he was finally feeling a fraction of the helplessness he inflicted on me. Elena's license was officially suspended 3 days later. The board sent a formal letter, public record now. Local real estate groups removed her listings. Her face, usually plastered on bus benches and billboards, disappeared overnight. She called Mark in hysterics at 2 a.m. one night. I lay beside him in bed, pretending to sleep, listening as he tried to calm her. "It's over," she sobbed. "Everything I built, gone." Mark whispered back, "We'll figure it out. We always do." But his voice shook. He didn't believe it anymore. They started turning on each other. I'd catch snippets, arguments in the driveway, tense texts I glimpsed when Mark left his phone unlocked. Elena blamed Mark for being sloppy with the affair. Mark blamed Elena for drawing attention with her flashy deals. They accused each other of talking too much, trusting the wrong people, moving money too obviously. And through it all, I reflected. Late at night when the house was finally quiet, I'd sit in my office with the door closed and open the evidence folder on my laptop. Bank records, emails, photos, texts, the private investigator's final report. Thick, damning, devastating. I'd scroll through it slowly, letting the pain wash over me once last time, not to drown in it, but to remember why. The humiliation at the barbecue, the tears on the bathroom floor, the years of being treated like background noise in my own life. I wasn't that woman anymore. The emotional payoff was brewing now, slow, rich, inevitable. I could feel it in my bones. The accounts were frozen, their careers were collapsing, their reputations were cracking, and the final pieces, divorce papers, criminal referrals, full public exposure, were already in motion. They had no idea how much worse it was about to get. But I did, and for the first time in years, I slept soundly. The systems I'd set in motion were closing in from every direction, and there was no escape left for them. Total collapse wasn't just coming, it was already here. They just hadn't realized it yet. As every carefully laid trap snapped shut around them, exposure was only days away, and with it, the moment they would finally see my face without the mask. The mask held until the very last second. I'd worn it so long it almost felt like skin. Soft smiles, gentle questions, quiet support while their worlds burned. But now the fire was spreading beyond our house, into offices and boardrooms, into group chats and industry forums. The truth wasn't just coming out, it was exploding. It started with Mark's job. One Tuesday morning, the company issued an official statement, not a quiet internal memo, public, posted on their corporate site and LinkedIn page for every client, competitor, and employee to see. Following an internal investigation into workplace conduct, sales manager Mark Harlan has been terminated effective immediately. No details, just the cold, clinical language of HR. But everyone knew why. The photos had circulated, the emails had been forwarded, whispers turned into open conversations in break rooms and Slack channels. Favoritism, affair with a subordinate. He thought he was untouchable. Mark found out the same way the rest of the world did, scrolling his phone at the kitchen table while I made eggs. His face went slack. The fork slipped from his hand and clattered against the plate. "They fired me," he said, voice hollow. "Publicly. My name's on the website." I turned from the stove, eyes wide with practiced shock. "What? Let me see." I took the phone, scrolled slowly, letting him watch my expression shift from confusion to sympathy. "Oh, Mark, I'm so sorry." I set the phone down gently and wrapped my arms around him from behind. He didn't hug back. His body was rigid, like he'd already turned to stone. He didn't leave the house for 3 days. Phone calls went unanswered, LinkedIn messages piled up, old colleagues offering fake condolences, headhunters circling like vultures. His reputation, the one thing he'd always prided himself on, the charm, the deals, the easy laughter, was shattered. People he'd mentored avoided his texts. Golf buddies canceled tea times. The man who could once walk into any room and own it couldn't even look me in the eye. Elena's exposure hit harder and louder. The real estate board didn't just suspend her license, they revoked it completely. A press release went out to every major Chicago outlet. Licensed realtor Elena Reynolds found to have engaged in multiple instances of fraud, including forged disclosures and undisclosed conflicts of interest. They listed the properties: the lakefront condo, my lakefront condo, paid for with my inheritance, was named specifically. Local news picked it up that evening. A reporter stood outside her building, camera lights harsh against the glass doors, reciting the allegations while neighbors watched from balconies. Elena called Mark at 7 p.m., screaming so loud I heard her from the hallway. "It's everywhere. Channel 7, Channel 9, the Tribune online. My face is on all of them. Clients are suing. The board's referring me for criminal charges." Her voice broke into sobs. "I'm ruined, completely ruined." Mark tried to calm her, but his own voice shook. "We'll fight it. We'll get lawyers." "With what money?" she shouted. "Everything's frozen. Mom's gonna lose the house. I can't even pay my HOA fees this month." I stood just outside the bedroom door, listening, face composed. Inside, anticipation thrummed like a second heartbeat. This was the moment I'd waited for, their carefully constructed images cracking wide open for everyone to see. Social fallout followed fast. Mutual friends started pulling away. Group texts went quiet when Mark's name appeared. One couple we'd vacationed with unfollowed both of us on Instagram. Alina's flashy posts, new bags, champagne brunches, another closing in the books, were flooded with comments. "How's the investigation going? Karma's real." She disabled comments, then made her account private, then deleted it altogether. Mark's mother called once, crying, begging to know what was happening. Mark handed me the phone without a word. I spoke softly, sadly. "We're figuring it out, Linda. It's been really hard." She believed me, the grieving daughter-in-law holding everything together. She had no idea I was the one pulling the strings. Through it all, I stayed composed. I cooked meals, neither of them ate. I answered the door for delivery drivers like nothing was wrong. When Mark stared blankly at the TV, I sat beside him, hand resting lightly on his knee. When Elena showed up at midnight one night, mascara streaked, hair unwashed, I made her tea and let her cry on my couch. I listened to her rage about whoever did this without flinching. They were losing control completely, and they still didn't know it was me. Late one night, after Elena had finally left and Mark passed out on the couch with a half-empty bottle beside him, I stood in the kitchen and looked out at the dark backyard. The garden I'd planted years ago was overgrown now, neglected while I focused on survival. But it was still mine. This house was mine. My life was mine. The anticipation was at its peak. Every system I'd set in motion, the freezes, the investigations, the leaks, had done its job. Their careers were over, their reputations destroyed, their family fracturing under the weight. But the final piece, the one that would reverse everything, that would force them to look me in the eye and see me as nothing, and then watch everything they valued burn, was ready. The divorce papers were signed by the judge. The full evidence packet, including the criminal referral for theft and fraud, was filed. All that remained was delivery. I walked to my office, opened the drawer, and touched the thick envelope waiting there. Tomorrow. Tomorrow they would know. Tomorrow the mask would come off. And when it did, they would finally understand what it felt like to be seen as nothing, and then watch everything they valued burn. The truth wasn't just out now, it was everywhere. And the climax, the moment they would finally face the woman they'd dismissed, robbed, and humiliated, was only hours away. I chose a Sunday morning for the reveal. Quiet, ordinary, the kind of day where nothing world-shattering is supposed to happen. Mark was at the kitchen table in sweatpants, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. He hadn't shaved in days. His phone lay face down beside him. He'd stopped checking it after the 100th unread message from former colleagues. Alina was due any minute. She'd texted Mark that she needed to talk strategy. I'd made sure of it. I'd prepared everything the night before. The thick manila envelope sat on my desk upstairs. Divorce papers, asset recovery orders, the full forensic accounting report, copies of every email, every transfer, every damning photo. Beside it, a smaller folder, the criminal referral packet already filed with the state's attorney for theft, fraud, and conspiracy, all time-stamped, all airtight. I showered, dressed simply, jeans, a soft gray sweater, hair down. No armor, no drama, just me. When the doorbell rang, Mark didn't even move. I opened it myself. Elena stood on the porch, wrapped in an expensive coat that suddenly looked too big for her. Her eyes were red-rimmed, makeup minimal. She barely nodded at me as she stepped inside. "Where's Mark?" "Kitchen," I said calmly, closing the door behind her. They sat at the table like survivors of a shipwreck, shoulders slumped, voices low, already mid-conversation about lawyers they couldn't afford and assets they no longer had. I let them talk for a minute. I wanted them together. I wanted them to hear it at the same time. Then I walked in carrying the envelope. Mark looked up first. "What's that?" I didn't answer right away. I pulled out the chair at the head of the table, the one nobody ever sat in, and lowered myself into it slowly, placed the envelope in front of me, folded my hands on top of it. They both stared, confusion creeping in. "Ima, seriously, we're in the middle of something," Elena said, impatient. "I know," I said. My voice was steady, almost gentle. "That's why I waited until you were both here." Mark frowned. Waited for what? I opened the envelope, pulled out the divorce petition first, and slid it across the table toward him. His name at the top, mine beside it. Grounds, financial abuse, infidelity, irreconcilable differences. He blinked at the document like it was written in another language. "What the hell is this?" "Divorce papers," I said simply. "I filed last week. You'll be served officially tomorrow, but I thought you deserved to hear it from me first." His mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. Elena snatched the papers, scanning them quickly. Her face paled. "This is a joke. You can't—" I slid the next set toward her, the asset freeze orders, the forensic report, the itemized list of every transfer from my inheritance account to theirs, over $220,000 documented, traced, recovered. "I already did," I said. Mark finally found his voice. "Ima, babe, what are you talking about? We can work this out, whatever you think." "I don't think," I cut in, calm but firm. "I know." I laid out the rest one document at a time, like cards in a winning hand. Emails between them discussing how to siphon the money without me noticing, texts about handling Ima after the final property closed, photos of Mark and Lisa. The anonymous tips? Mine. The account freezes? My lawyer. The HR complaint, the real estate board referral, all me. Every piece of their downfall orchestrated quietly, patiently from inside the house they thought they controlled. Alina's breath hitched. You did this?" I met her eyes. Every single part. Mark stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "This is insane. You're my wife." "Was," I corrected, "and you were my husband, until you decided I was an easy mark, until you and your sister stole from me, lied to me, humiliated me, and planned to leave me with nothing." My voice stayed even, but the words landed like blows. Alina's hands shook as she flipped through the pages. "How long?" I said, "Since the night I overheard you in the living room, the night you called me clueless, wrapped up in my little designs, too trusting to notice." Mark's face crumpled, shock giving way to fury, then desperation. "Ima, please, we can fix this. It was a mistake. The money, we'll pay it back." "You can't," I said. "It's already back in my name. The judge ordered full restitution, with interest." Alina let out a choked sob, half laugh, half sob. "You planned this, all of it?" "Yes." Mark took a step toward me, hands out like he could still charm his way through. "Babe, come on, we're family." "No," I said, standing now. My voice finally rose, not loud, but sharp enough to cut through the air. "You stopped being my family the moment you decided I was disposable, the moment you laughed about how easy I was to fool, the moment you stood at that barbecue and let everyone mock me while you stole my future." I looked at Elena. "You patted my hand and told me not to worry my pretty head. Remember that?" She couldn't meet my eyes. I looked back at Mark. "You kissed me goodnight while planning to divorce me the second the money was gone." The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Then Mark's anger cracked wide open. "You vindicative bitch," he spat. "You destroyed us." I didn't flinch. "No," I said quietly. "You destroyed yourselves. I just made sure you felt the consequences." Elena started crying, ugly, heaving sobs. "I'm going to lose everything, my career, my home." "You already have," I said, not cruelly, just fact. Mark sank back into his chair, defeated. All the charm, the confidence, the arrogance, gone. He looked small. Both of them did. I gathered the papers, slid them back into the envelope. "The police will likely contact you soon," I said. "The state attorney is reviewing the theft charges. You'll need lawyers, good ones." I walked to the doorway, paused. "One more thing." They looked up, broken. "I'm keeping the house, the garden, my life. Everything you tried to take from me, I took back." I left them there at the table, the envelope between them like a bomb that had already gone off. Upstairs, I closed the bedroom door, leaned against it, and finally let the breath I'd been holding escape. The rage was gone. The pain was gone. In its place, release. Deep, cleansing, overwhelming. Tears came, not from hurt this time, but from relief so powerful it shook me. It was over. They had seen me, really seen me, and they would never forget what happened when they underestimated the wrong woman. The power wasn't just reversed now, it was mine, completely, and for the first time in years, I felt free. The house felt different the day they left. Mark packed his things in silence, 2 suitcases and a couple of boxes. No arguments, no begging, just the quiet zip of bags and the occasional thud of something dropped. He paused in the doorway of what used to be our bedroom, looked at me standing in the hallway, and opened his mouth like he might say something, an apology, an accusation, anything. But he closed it again, shook his head, and walked out. The front door clicked shut behind him with a finality that echoed through the empty rooms. I watched from the window as he loaded his car and drove away. He moved back in with his mother, I learned later, sharing the spare room in the house Elena could no longer help support. The once charismatic sales manager was now jobless, resume poisoned, references silent. No one in Chicago real estate or corporate sales would touch him. He took a low-level retail job eventually, nights and weekends, scanning items at a big-box store. The man who used to close 6-figure deals now folded shirts for minimum wage. Elena's fall was steeper. The criminal charges stuck: embezzlement, fraud, theft by deception. She took a plea to avoid trial, community service, restitution she couldn't pay, 5 years of probation. Her condo sold at auction to cover debts. The lakefront dream vanished overnight. She moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, driving for rideshare apps to make rent. The woman who once air-kissed clients in designer heels now sat in traffic, 5-star rating her only currency. Friends disappeared. Social invites dried up. Her name became a cautionary tale in real estate circles. Remember Elena Reynolds? Don't be like her. Their mother lost the family home to foreclosure 6 months later. Mark and Elena couldn't save it. The siblings barely spoke anymore. Blame had calcified into resentment. Family gatherings stopped existing. And me? I stayed in the house. Our house. My house. The first few weeks were strange. Too quiet, too still. I'd walk into rooms expecting tension and find only peace. I repainted the kitchen a soft sage green, the color Mark always hated. I ripped out the overgrown backyard and planted new things: roses, lavender, a small vegetable patch. My hands in the dirt felt like therapy. Every bloom was proof I was growing again. Financially, I recovered everything. The judge awarded full restitution plus damages. My inheritance returned, intact and then some, invested wisely this time, by me. My freelance design work exploded. Clients came through word of mouth at first, then steadily, until I had to hire an assistant. Turns out, people love working with someone who's calm under pressure, who meets deadlines without drama. My little hobby became a thriving business. I even started mentoring young women designers, teaching them to protect their finances, trust their instincts, never hand over control. Friends came back too, the real ones. Apologies over coffee, long hugs. We should have seen it. I forgave them easily. Holding grudges felt like carrying Mark and Elena's baggage for them. I made new friends as well, strong, independent women who'd walked through their own fires. We laughed louder, traveled farther, lived bigger. Some nights I'd sit on the back porch with a glass of wine, watching the sunset over my garden, and feel the weight of it all settle. Not heavy anymore, just real. I thought a lot about karma, about justice, about how revenge had felt in the moment: sharp, righteous, necessary. But what stayed with me wasn't the satisfaction of their downfall. It was the reclamation of my own worth. They taught me, brutally, that silence costs more than truth, that being nice isn't the same as being kind to yourself, that people who dismiss you will always underestimate what you're capable of when you finally decide you've had enough. I grew into someone I barely recognized, in the best way: confident without arrogance, strong without hardness, trusting but never again blindly. I forgave myself, too, for the years I stayed quiet, for ignoring the whispers in my gut, for believing peace was worth more than my dignity. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant freeing myself from carrying it forever. 1 year after the divorce was final, I stood in my garden on a warm spring evening, hands dirty from planting new roses. The air smelled of possibility. I thought about the woman who once cried on the bathroom floor, small and powerless, and I felt nothing but gratitude for her. She survived long enough to become me. If I could go back and tell her one thing, it would be this: you were never clueless. You were kind, and kindness isn't weakness. It's the quiet strength that lets you endure until you're ready to rise. They thought they broke me. They just forged me. And the life I built on the other side, it's mine, completely. No secrets, no lies, no one else's hands on what belongs to me. Just truth, peace, and a garden that blooms brighter every year. Never ignore your instincts. Silence always costs more than truth, but speaking it, finally, fully, and unapologetically, that's where freedom begins.